anti-Semitism in the concept of Shabbat observance. Because for those of us who observe Shabbat, I can guarantee, like I said, unless you've primarily worked in a Jewish environment, you've had a resentment because of not being able to work on Shabbat or a high holy day, or you have been denied a job opportunity. Hello, everyone. Welcome to A Jew Like Me. My name is Jessica Israel, and this is a podcast for all of us who love Torah, but have felt like we are not fully represented in mainstream Jewish life or the pop culture idea of who a Jew is or what a Jew looks like. We are the children of Abraham, and this podcast is to create our place at the table, let our voices be heard, and celebrate the multiculturalism of Judaism. Let's get into our episode. You know, there's so many conversations around anti-Semitism in a general concept of spreading false information or hatred or conspiracies about Jews. But there is a way that anti-Semitism affects so many of us in our regular daily lives that I feel like is not talked about. And that is Shabbat observance. So for Jews who observe Shabbat, unless they have worked in a primarily Jewish environment, they have probably encountered a lot of resistance and misunderstanding and just flat out not being hired for roles because of that Shabbat observance. A lot of times, at least what I've realized, is that the world at large, I don't think has a great understanding of Judaism. And right now I'm talking about Judaism and the concept of our faith and how we observe it. Now, it is very varied, right? The way one person observes it is going to be completely different from the way another person observes it, right? We know that. But let's say, for example, in America is predominantly Christian in terms of the systems in place and what they've been founded upon, right? So most things will be closed on a Sunday. The post office is not open on a Sunday, but they'll maybe open on a Saturday, depending on where you go. Banks may not be open on a Sunday, but they'll be open and have some hours on a Saturday, depending on where you go. Lots of times, think about the events that occur. Most events will occur on a Friday night or during Saturday. They don't occur on Sunday. Sunday is where everything kind of tones itself down a bit, right? At least in the United States. And because of that, there really isn't a lot of education around Judaism and the observance of Shabbat. And people may just interchangeably use the term Sabbath. So they'll say, oh, well, okay, a Christian Sabbath is on Sunday and a Jewish Sabbath is on Saturday, or as we know, Friday night to Saturday night. But that's not necessarily correct because it glosses over and eliminates the reality that our Sabbaths are not the same. Because, for example, in Christianity, it may not be preferred that you work on Sunday, but there's nothing that says that you can't. There's nothing that says you can't do something on a Sunday. It's maybe preferable that you don't. But if anything, hey, even if you go to church and then go to work after, that's okay. The main focal point is church, right? The focal point is not everything closes down. That's not really what it is. And even if it's the idea of things closed down, it's about, okay, families going out and getting dinner together and everything else. So, they're still engaging in commerce and other stuff like that, right? So even if it's not work, like I'm not going to work, there's still other things being done. I mean, people cleaning their house. Okay, well, Sunday we're going to clean the house. Like these things that we don't do on a Sabbath, because our requirements for rest are different. We have actual requirements for that. And trust me, I'm not criticizing anybody in their faith or anything and how they observe with this, but I'm trying to explain how we can really experience a backlash when we are saying, hey, I can't work on a Saturday. Well, that's Shabbat. Well, what's Shabbat? Well, that's my Sabbath. And so if they relate it to their Sabbath, then they're not going to have the full understanding. Because it's just like when we say, well, I have a holy day. I can't do this. It's Yom Kippur. I can't do this. It's Shimini Atzeret. They'll say, oh, well, we have holidays too. Yeah, but my holy day is not a holiday, if that makes sense. It's not a day where I can do whatever I want. There are things that I'm sanctioned to do. There are ways that I must observe. I cannot engage in normal everyday things on that day. And that understanding is not necessarily there. So while someone may say, hey, I prefer not to work on Sundays, if they're scheduled for a Sunday, they'll still go in lots of times, even if they don't like it. For us who are observant of Shabbat, we can't. There is no, let's get some wiggle room. We just can't. And a lot of times that can really lead to a backlash in the workplace. It can lead to a backlash because especially this idea that Friday and Saturday are the weekend. And we say, hey, I can't work Friday night. I can't do this thing on Saturday. It's this idea of, oh, you just want to have the weekend off. You just want to have fun on the weekend. And it's like, no, that's not what we're doing on our Sabbath. It's not what we're doing on our Shabbat. That's not how it works for us. And there's not that understanding there. And because we're coming from two different understandings of the same word, right? The same word, but the interpretation of the word is completely different. It can lead to a lot of resentment as well. When you're saying, nope, I have a limit, I can't do that. Because there's a difference for us saying we can't, we are not allowed to do something versus someone else saying they prefer not to, they would like not to. For us, it's not a preference, it is a requirement. And I have personally, within my own family, multiple members of my family, been affected by these types of things. I myself have been affected by it, where, a job is just like, well, hey, sorry, you're perfect for the role, but I need you to be available, on call at this time, or I need you to be available to do this or to do that, or they don't like that you're taking particular days off, for the holy days. And it really leads to a negative environment in the workplace. And I don't think that that's talked about enough. I think that there needs to be a larger discussion around anti-Semitism in the concept of Shabbat observance. Because for those of us who observe Shabbat, I can guarantee, like I said, unless you've primarily worked in a Jewish environment, you've had a resentment because of not being able to work on Shabbat or a high holy day, or you have been denied a job opportunity because you said, hey, Friday nights and Saturdays are non-negotiable for me to even answer an email, to take a look at anything, to even think about this job. And employers don't like that. Employers don't like it, first of all, because they don't like boundaries. And second of all, because for them, within this Christian world that we live in, and I'll say Christian world just speaking in the concept of the United States, they think it's just, oh, well, you just don't want to be bothered on the weekend. And, well, why do you get to say that you're not going to look at this? Why do you get to say that you're not going to work? And there is that resentment. We're not saying we're better than anyone or anything like that, but just looking for a religious accommodation. And, things can start off good in a place, but, oh man, I always hold my breath when holy days are coming around, or something is coming up, a new project, and, it looks like someone wants, you to take a look at your emails, or just to be available or whatever the case may be. And then you have to draw that line. Because sometimes they're okay when you say, hey, I'm Jewish. I can't do this on whatever day. And sometimes they may seem okay with it at first. But then once it actually happens and they realize this is not a preference, it is a requirement and there is no wiggle room, oh yeah, you will get that backlash. But then sometimes they just flat out say no. There's a situation where in my family, someone going for a job, and they were basically hired, to be honest. I mean, the guy was like, oh, wow, you're way overqualified. You're perfect for this. This is awesome. It was mentioned, hey, Jewish, I observe Shabbat. I can't work, Friday night to Saturday night, but I will work every other day. I will work 6 days a week. In fact, I will work even Friday morning. As long as I can be done before sunset and be able to get home, I will work. So you've got me 6 days a week. They were okay with it until it got to somebody else. And that person who was in charge of the official hiring decision, even though everything was fine, and it was now they just had, oh, well, just come in tomorrow for this formality. You're set. You've got the job. Once that person heard that this Jewish person was not going to be able to work on Saturdays, right, or Friday nights, then they called before that last formality and just canceled it and said, actually, we decided we're not going to proceed with you. And the conversation was truly just, well, did you tell them that this was for, religious accommodation for a religious reason? And I mean, everything else was fine. Like, we were moving forward with the hiring. Yeah, we just decided because of that, we're not going to. They specifically said because of that. And they knew it was for religious reasons and did not care and said, nope, we changed our mind, So basically, another person with hiring power heard about it and said, absolutely not. And this has happened, I'm sure, to many people. I know we are not the only family who has experienced this. And that's why I wanted to talk about it. Because, a Jew like me experiences this too. And in my prior episode where we talked about Jew face and what a Jew looks like, and, the idea that Jews could fit in one box, when that's not true because we all look many different ways. The thing especially I can say about being a Jew of color is that I told a friend recently, it's like you get hit on one side of your face and then get smacked on the other. One side you've got racism, the other side you've got anti-Semitism. As a Jew of color, no matter which way you turn, someone is hitting you. No matter which way you turn, it is a very tough position to be in. And I wish that the Jewish community at large would recognize that more, speak about that more, and speak against that more. Because when we're talking about the most vulnerable, you're looking at it. Because no matter where we turn, someone is finding a reason to hate us. Someone is finding a reason to say that they don't want us here. So please think about this, guys. And when we talk about anti-Semitism, let's really broaden that conversation and go beyond just this general idea of people not liking Jews, the reality of what we face in our regular everyday lives, right? The reality of being denied job opportunities simply because of our religious observance, the real effects, So thank you guys so much for joining me, and I look forward to speaking with you on the next one. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast today. I really appreciate the support. Also, if you're interested and would like to send a personal donation, because this is a labor of love, my Cash App is Torah Blessed, TorahBlessed. Thank you again so much for the support, guys, and I really look forward to chatting again next time.